You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, Episode 3. In this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, we are joined by World Goose Calling Champion and Director of Marketing for Higdon Outdoors, Kelley Powers, to talk about some of his competition calling. He shares some experiences from the outdoor industry and tells us about some of the new products that Higdon has to offer. Hang with us. We got a good one here. All right. Welcome to the show. I am Josh Palm, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, how are you, sir?
Pretty well. How are you doing?
Doing well. You know, I'm excited because we've got a great show coming up here, and really excited to talk to Kelley. But we've had the Goose opener here in our neck of the woods, and we were able to get out together. I was able to come up to Pennsylvania and hunt with you and some of the guys, and we didn't have a bang up hunt, but we had a good hunt, I think.
Yeah, the birds didn't totally cooperate, and surprisingly, we didn't hear the amount of shooting that we thought we would for a nice opening day. We still scratched a few, but it wasn't quite what we were expecting for sure.
Yeah, it's hard too, because the opening day has been such a great hunt on so many occasions in the past that you almost get unrealistic expectations as to what you hope for. We had a bunch of guys in the field. We were hunting an 8-bird limit area, so we were really hoping to make a nice pile of birds. And we've talked about this in some of our past shows, but there just wasn't the pressure from the other fields that we expected. The flight wasn't real good. We had a lot of fog, and when the birds got up, there wasn't really a lot of shooting going on around us, so we didn't have that volley kind of helping us out. But and all in all, we had a good hunt, and it was just kind of good to scratch the itch and get back out there. And it's still early. We got a lot of season left to go.
Yeah, and I can tack onto that. We've been out of time again, and the scouting has been paying off. We get out there and the birds are there, and we show up the next day and they're missing. So it's been a little different. I don't know if it's the weather or some of the super bright moons that we have, but I did meet a new fella. He came up as we were unloading our decoys and asked if we were hunting that field, and we're like, yes, we are, and if you'd like to join us, unload your stuff and come on with us. So we met a new guy, a new friend, and a new hunting partner. So that was nice to interact with him.
Yeah, that's always good to make another friend, and you can never have too many guns in the field with you. So all good stuff there to report from us here in the early season. But this is a really important episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We're going to be joined by Kelley Powers, who is just one of the best to ever do it when it comes to, competition goose calling. He's been around the industry for a really long time. He's a wealth of knowledge, and we're just really excited to talk with him and just hear some of the things that he has to say about the waterfowl industry and competition calling, and some of the, the products that he's involved with there at Higdon Outdoors and the sort of the changes that they're going through. So, we're really excited for this episode and what we're going to bring to you guys.
Yeah, you can't say really excited enough times. He's the best of the best, and he's done things that no one else ever has, and I'm excited to throw some questions his way.
Okay, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, and we're going to be joined by Kelley Powers. All right, we are now joined on the podcast by World Goose Calling Champion and Director of Marketing for Higdon Outdoors, Kelley Powers. Sir, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're doing great. We're incredibly excited to have you on the show. There's a ton of stuff that we want to get into with you. But for those of those people listening to the show that may not be as familiar with you and your background, tell us a little bit about your background in the outdoor industry, specifically, your competition calling. Tell us a little bit how you got into competition calling, and maybe talk to us a little bit about some of the people that have been the biggest influences in your calling career.
Yeah, man, that's of course kind of a short rundown. We could talk about that probably all night. But I've definitely been blessed throughout my calling career and with a lot of influences that people have helped me out along the way. Kind of to start off at the beginning, I was born and raised in Union City, Tennessee. It's a little small farming community here in Northwest Tennessee, probably around 30 minutes from the Mississippi River and Reelfoot Lake. waterfowling terms, real footage is pretty huge as far as a waterfowl mecca. And then also to the east is the Tennessee River system, which is about another 45 minutes away. So I'm kind of smack dab right in the middle of waterfowl country. And growing up around here, especially in a rural and farm environment, hunting is a way of life. And I can remember when I was a child and going, goose hunting with my dad back when we got Canada geese. Unfortunately, we don't get many anymore, but, going hunting with him and my two older brothers, like I said, it was a way of life. I mean, if you didn't go hunting one day, it was almost looked upon as a sin. There were times that you get made fun of and stuff like that. And ever since when I was about in 8th grade, was really, of course, I grew up hunting even when I could barely walk and going with my dad and brothers. But when I was in 8th grade, started going just about all the time. And I remember my freshman in high school, and I was able to drive. I had I used to call a learner's permit back and forth from school, but every morning I would hunt and get to the blind at 5:30 and be at school by 7:45, and then leave school at 3:00 and be back in the duck blind around 3:20. And you do that 60 days a year, every single day. And to this day, like I say, that's been 25 years ago, and it's still, really hasn't changed. Of course, when you add a wife and kids in the mix, it does kind of hamper your plans just a little bit. But being blessed in this, like I said, a rural community and have hunting opportunities literally just a mile down the road, and great hunting is I've been very, very fortunate. So when I was in high school, about a senior in high school, I kind of have always been had a competitive spirit, and I wanted to get involved in calling contests. And really the main reason is I wanted a career in the hunting industry. As crazy as that sounds, anything that I could do in the hunting industry, I was all for it. And I looked at it as a calling contest, maybe as a way and a door that I could open up to try out that would actually, where I could, introduce me to some of these company presidents and stuff like that in the hunting industry. It's funny because I remember the conversation I had with my parents, about it. Of course, they thought I was crazy, but I'll never forget. I said, if I could ever be fortunate to win a big contest like the World or something, maybe I could create a name for myself that I could go and knock on a door of a company president in the outdoor industry and maybe get a job, after college, or even an internship during college. And roughly about a year and a half later, that dream came true. Like I said, I started calling contests in the summer of '97, and then really got into them big in '98, and in the fall of '99, I won the World Goose. The following year, I won the World Goose Champion of Champions, and then that unfortunately, retires you from the World Goose calling contest. But as far as goose calling contests, as you guys are probably aware, there are a lot of other independent contests that you can still call in and aren't necessarily retired from the sport. So I felt like, from my career-wise in calling contests, I was at my best 2, 3, 4, 5 years after I won the World in a lot of other contests. And I stayed actively involved in that until probably in the late, 2010, 2011, 12. And I'll still call in some meat duck calling contests every now and then. I still judge the World Goose events and help coordinate as far as getting judges and on the planning committee for that. And that contest has obviously given me a lot, and I tried to put back as much as I can and helping the sport grow. So that's kind of a rundown a little bit, I guess, kind of a crash course on from where I'm from and how I got into the calling contest, at least.
Well, I'd have to say that's pretty impressive if people can just look online, check your name out and see all your accomplishments, and it's quite impressive there. I'm going to skip a question we had written down, but I'm just going to go talk a little bit about your practice habits. You said that pretty much about 2 years after you started calling is when you won the World. So talk about your practice habits. How many hours per day or week did you put into practice to accomplish being the best of the best?
Well, that's a good question. Starting out, I had a strong percussion background and music background. I was really involved in percussion and drums growing up, and really into high school. And when I got into calling contests, a lot of the things that I was kind of taught from a book necessarily with percussion in school, carried over, and really helped me involving, calling. And I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out where I'm going with this. The first year I went to the World, man, I got killed. I didn't make the first cut. I can't remember how many callers were in, but I was blowing a flute style call at the time. And I watched, in Easton, Maryland, of kind of what was winning. And, there was a couple particular callers there that were blowing short reed goose calls. Back then, nobody blew short reed goose calls in calling contests. Very rarely did it happen, but there was a couple guys that were blowing short reed goose calls that were doing well, but it was a really powerful sound. It was very unique. Back then, short reeds were tuned really light and easy, and it was all that, people used hunting for the most part, but from a contest standpoint, it was flutes. Well, I saw what they were doing, and they were having some success with it. So when I left I left Maryland that weekend, and I got back home, and I started off on a sheet of paper, and I literally wrote down every note that I could do on a goose call, and every note that I've heard as far as a goose make, and literally tried to, transform that to sheet music as if you were to write a song, whether it's playing guitar, playing piano, whatever it may be. So I literally wrote down, and in my own terminology, you look at it now, and it's kind of crazy, the words that I was making up of this stuff, because there's not a set standard for calling notes per se. Somebody may call it this type of mode, and the next guy may call it this type of mode, but there's never an actual standard that it's under. So I would write this stuff down, and I basically built a routine, taking these notes and plugging them in different areas, and built a 90-second routine. And I would start at the beginning, and I would do the first, 5 seconds, and I would do it over and over and over, just those 5 seconds. And I'd go to the second 5, 10 seconds. I would do that segment, then I'd do another. So I built the whole routine in segments. Before a calling contest came, I would just work on the segments, and about a month before the contest would hit, then would I start putting the segments together. And then roughly around 2 weeks before the contest, I would put the full routine together and just blow routines, and the biggest thing in calling contests too, and this, we can get off really on some in-depth discussion on this, but, whether you're blowing, whether you have a trumpet or a saxophone or any kind of musical instrument, there are places in there that you take breaths, and the more you disguise where you take a breath, the more appealing and the more flow that has. Well, just like blowing a goose call, when you're the only one calling, where you take that breath or where that pause is the more you disguise that, the more flow that the overall routine will have. So it was a part that I really, really spent a lot of time on of having specific areas that you take a breath. Unfortunately, with today, a lot of callers, they'll always go back to what we call a check goose. They'll go back to just one honk, and they'll do it over and over. So they may go calling, well, when they're doing that one check goose, they're taking a breath. So, it's been really a pet peeve of mine to minimize that check goose, disguise when you take the breath, and then overall the actual flow of your routine is more appealing. And it's just like a song, you listen to a good song, the reason it's a good song is more than likely it has a good flow and a good rhythm. It's not necessarily erratic, and the same goes for a routine in a contest format. If it's appealing to the ear, it's because it probably has a good flow, that has, obviously the right notes and the right tone, but the flow is a big part. But as far as practicing in time, man, when you're in the, and some of these kids today, it's even younger than 16, but when your lungs develop around 16, 17 years old, and when you start getting into, adulthood there, your body develops to where you can create a lot more power with a call. And you have a lot more energy as well, meaning that there's not a lot of obstacles in the way. You don't necessarily have families that young as far as children. And for me, I was in that same boat. I mean, it was just every single day, every minute of the day, I was calling and practicing. And, one thing that I can say from an advice standpoint is practice smart. A lot of people will pick up the call, and the first thing they do in the call becomes habit, meaning every time they pick up a call, they do the same thing. They'll blow those first little sequence of notes. And that's kind of a bad habit to get into. What I would try to do is when I picked up the call, I would only practice the actual segment that I was working on that particular time. So I tried to maximize my practice time and not go off on a tangent of just blowing a bunch of random notes. So, but like I say, I would kind of live and die with a goose call in my hands and try to stay on task and watch the time leading up to a contest, and then if I kept my practice time to that schedule, I felt like when I got ready for a contest, I could give it my best.
You touched on one of these things, how no one blew short reed goose calls when you first got into it. And you talked about some of the breathing techniques. What else has changed, specifically with the calling competitions from, when you got started to what you see now and when you're judging and that kind of thing? What are some of the bigger, other than what you've already mentioned, anything else that you've seen kind of change and progress over the years?
There's been some good stuff, and there's been some bad things that I would say. I mean, not overly bad. Bad meaning some of the stuff that I dislike. A lot of callers try to do things they can't. Meaning they try to go too fast, and it shows weakness in calling. If they can go fast for a little bit and get out of it. A lot of these guys try to go all these crazy notes, and in reality, it does more harm to their routine than what it does good. As far as the good stuff that I've seen calling, there's been a lot of creativity. There's been a lot of notes that have evolved, I guess, that are goosey notes. Spit notes, different types of moans, different type trains, and stuff like that. There were variations back in my heyday of calling that we did stuff like that. But now it's kind of evolved, and a lot of guys are being really, really creative. I know the first spit note that I actually ever heard, and this was probably, let me think, the year 99 or 2000. Was actually in a goose pit with Alfie Lanham and Adam Rometta. And these are just, of course, Alfie's an incredible caller, and so is Adam. But these are just our goose killers. I mean, incredible hunters, and Adam was doing it. And I thought, man, that's incredible, and I've never heard it at that time done it on stage before. And that fall, Alfie Lanham used it as a signature note at the very end of his routine, and he ended up winning the Winchester World Open. And that note was a strong, I would think, would be one of the main reasons that he won it, because it turned a lot of heads as far as how creative and how awesome it was. I took a variation of that and actually extended it, made it longer, kind of like in a train style format. And it was funny because I used part of that in the World Goose and the year I won. And then after that, I was at a contest and I won't mention the area, but I had a judge that specifically just killed me for it. And, and his exact words were, son, in 30 years of goose hunting, I've never heard a goose do that, and as far as a spit note in a train, I was like, oh my God, it just, I banged my head up against the wall, because the number one biggest pet peeve for me is someone that says, I've never heard a goose do that. Their range of vocabulary is so far from the left and the right as far as what they do. And I've heard a lot of geese that sound horrible, that, were either sick or whatever. I'm not saying I would duplicate that on stage, but I would never say, well, I've never heard him do that, But my response to him was, well, for the betterment of the sport, I would love, and no disrespect, I would love to send you live audio if you would entertain the idea. And he said, absolutely. So literally, I went back home, and I had some old cassette tapes from, actually through Tim Grounds gave me that from Paul Kenyon that he had, and it literally, I still have a cassette tape of live audio. I guess this was back in the 70s or 80s that he had. And I pulled some spit notes down, and I basically re-recorded them onto a CD, mailed them to that specific judge, and he called me afterwards, and he said, I stand corrected. So, a lot of stuff is evolved like that, and definitely for the betterment of the sport. One thing that goose calling has done that's really, really well is it hasn't necessarily evolved into something that it hasn't evolved into notes that geese don't make, if that makes sense. Duck calling, from a contest standpoint, it has evolved into high balls and stuff like that. I understand guys use that in hunting, that's fine, but a duck doesn't do it, and that's one of the reasons a lot of times I've really never got into competition duck calling. I just, I understand from a hunting standpoint, some guys will do that. I never do personally. I hunt in timber most of the time, and it's kind of the old Phil Robertson says, if a duck can't win it, why would he want to call in it? And I'm kind of the same mentality, especially on a goose calling stuff. The person that's closest to a goose that can do all the notes, I think should win the contest. So.
Well, I'll tell you one
kind
thing.
of my opinion on that.
One thing that's definitely changed since you started calling is you'd be sending that guy a YouTube video or something. You wouldn't be ripping any cassette tapes down these days.
Jay's exactly right. I was, taking, camcorders and all that and the great big shoulder cams and setting them up and trying to learn. And now it's easy. It's easy for a caller to learn. I mean, they can go to a contest and record it with their cell phone and listen to YouTube, and it's amazing how quick, and that's great. I mean, the year I won the world, the next year it was, my father even went to a contest with me. He's like, man, there were like 4 of you up there, people, copying notes, and that's fine. That's great, because I learned off other people ahead of me for sure, and it makes the sport better, and it keeps if you're considered, if people are copying you, then I felt like I was doing something good at least. They wanted to better their calling by listening to me. So it is what it is there.
Yeah, and with so much information out there now, and I pull up YouTube and I watch competitions that people have recorded from all over the country, and I see some of the best callers in the country on just through YouTube browsing. Anybody out there that you see or you've seen that kind of reminds me of or reminds you of yourself when you are getting started, or anybody sort of like a big name that you think might be coming up, somebody that you've been impressed with on the stage?
Oh, man, that's actually a good question. From a personal standpoint and an ability standpoint, Hunter Grounds is remarkable. When Hunter's at his best, he's tough to beat, and that's a fact. And I grew up. I mean, Hunter is like a little brother to me, and grew up. And when they first started doing the 2-man world team events, or just, the 2-man contest used to be, it was all 3-man pits. If you ever had a team contest, it was 3 callers. Well, that kind of evolved into a 2-man, and I would call with Hunter. And at the time, you might have looked at it were kind of think, well, I don't want to say crazy, but, Hunter was 12 years old, and he was still at that point to where he was an incredible caller, don't get me wrong, but he was at that point to where his body was developing, and it was his lungs were getting, more capacity, and he was getting to where he could call with more power. But I saw the talent, man, and he had it, and I'm telling you, he was a monster, and really now they're, with him, when he was calling, and I kind of got out of couldn't call in the world anymore, he was one that I would really try to help. And there's nothing else I would rather do even than calling, and that would be to help someone else, especially that I saw that had the ability. And Hunter was one, man, I could say, hey, do it this way or do it that way. As ridiculous as it would sound or as difficult as it could be, he could nail it and he could pull it off. And that was something that he is remarkably talented, but it, a lot of that evolves too. It gets to where you go from contest to contest. You may win one weekend, and then the next contest is 2 months later and not do good at all. It has nothing necessarily to do with the judges. A lot of it has to do with, as a caller, you weren't necessarily prepared, not only prepared physically, but you weren't mentally prepared. And I noticed that a lot with myself. I'd go to contests that my head wasn't in the game, and I didn't give it my best, and I knew when I was on stage, that I just wasn't in it, and you lack in power, you lack in volume, and you're not paying attention to those little details of hiding breaths, your crescendos, your decrescendos, you're all the way off the chart, and you couldn't necessarily put that routine together like you practice,
Yeah, I like the fact that you brought up how you helped Hunter, and like you said, he is absolutely amazing. And we talk about not just helping people with calling, but, hunting, get people out hunting. And, just, it seems like sometimes waterfowlers are kind of to themselves and to their own fields and whatnot. And it's just cool that, you talk about, helping each other out. And right now I'm going to try and loosen it up a little bit and just ask, you're around competition calling, you've been around, tons of stages. Tell us about, an embarrassing moment that you've had on stage.
Oh, God, that's a great question. Well, I'll tell you a potentially embarrassing moment. The U.S. Open in Stuttgart, the first year they had a U.S. Open. Let me kind of backtrack a little bit. I did the first time I ever did a spit note in a calling contest. I think it was at I can't remember what contest I was in, but anyway, anytime I try to come up with new notes. There's always a go-to person or a couple. You have your network of friends, and one of mine that man is I would do anything in the world of and highly respect is Brandon Fletcher. Not many people probably know of Brandon as far as current callers, but Brandon is, I promise you, you put a call in his hands today, short reed flute, doesn't matter. You give him 2 weeks to practice, and he's going to go out there and kick some butt. He's awesome. I mean, absolutely incredible hunter. Won the Winchester World Open. He's won the North American Masters, and he did it all in the flute days. But incredible caller. Well, I called him with the spit note idea, and this was right before the U.S. Open prep. And at the time, everybody was doing a spit note within just a short version, just a real short, abrupt, spit. And I said, Fletcher, there's more to this note than what a lot of people are doing. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, what if I extend it? I said, what if I extend it to more of a moan and a pleading sound as a cry? And he was like, oh, yeah. And then so we started talking. And he said, why don't you do a cluck behind it, like a double cluck, so we were doing this over the phone. Well, then I said, well, let me quiver my hands, and basically you take your offhand and you quiver it, and the goose comes alive then, And so we literally were doing this over the phone with him, and he's like, that's it, you nailed it. And I said, all right, that's my comeback. That's how I'm going to do my comeback, and try to, you're trying to stay ahead of all the other callers. Well, anyway, during the U.S. Open in Stuttgart, I lead into that, and the first round, I mean, I just, nailed it. First round, whatever, and I go back behind the stage, and a lot of the guys were laughing at me. They're like, dude, that is incredible, whatever. Well, I think going into the final round, I was probably, 10, 11 points in the lead, and of course I didn't know that until afterwards. Well, I go on the final round, and I go into that, and right when I go into my comeback, and I was in the lead but didn't know, I was going into my comeback, and I tried to do that spit note and quiver, and my hand was closed too much, and the awfulest sound you've ever heard, as far as the call didn't lock up, but I just had it was more like a softer train, if that makes sense. And back then, guys weren't even doing trains. So, but it was just an off-tone note. So as soon as I did that, it was like, all right, don't panic, boom, do it again, intentional, And so I did it a second time intentional. I did a cluck right after it. I did it a third time intentional, whatever. And then I finished my routine. When I walked backstage, Richie, I'll never forget, Richie McKnight was just kind of had some choice words to say to me. And he said, you sorry dog. He said, you did that on purpose, didn't you? I said, well, the first time was an accident, but the second and third time I did it intentional because I'm trying to trick the judges to saying, no, this is what I mean to do, and ended up winning the contest. And I had two of the judges come up afterwards and say, man, that last round, was that kind of a weird note or what was going on? And I just kind of laughed, and they said, well, I heard you do it the first time, and they were literally going to deduct a point or two, and they said, but then you did it again, and then you did it again. I was like, oh, that's kind of a goosey note. So, I was a little embarrassed there at first, and then I actually kind of tricked the judges, and tried to force myself to make an incorrect note again, and push my way through it, and was able to really disguise what would have been an obvious mistake if I just quit calling or whatever, So that was could have been an embarrassing moment, but it actually turned out, in my favor.
I think that goes a long way to show why you're one of the best. I would probably just throw my call down and start crying. I mean, I'd have panicked, I'm sure.
I always, and I told Hunter this, and I always told her, I said, the best bit of advice I can give you, especially for someone with nerves, I said, when you walk up stage for your warm up, when they call caller number 2, come to the stage, please. I said, I'm dead serious. I said, trip on your own feet and fall flat on your face. And Hunter laughed at me, and I said, seriously, because it can't get any worse than that from that point forward. And I said, you've got to get the nerves. I said, just recognize the crowd's not even there, and use the stage for your advantage, as far as where to face, how the judges are. Every calling venue is different. Indoors, outdoors, how many people are in the audience? Are the floors concrete? Are they carpet? Are they, so many different things go into play. And through my calling career, I would write notes down and learn, and say, okay, if I'm in this situation, I need to face this way. I need to face either the judges or I need to face it away from the judges, because every little room that you were calling in, it had a different acoustic effects. Things were different. And, you put those pieces of the puzzle together, and you find out what wins at certain locations, and that's what you keep trying to do, and that's what I always tried to help Hunter with, and some of the other guys that I help calling, and go from there. So,
Kelley, I'm gonna ask you one more question about calling, and then we're gonna transition into some other things. But yeah, I've got a question for you that it might just be my personal perception. And if I'm wrong on this, please correct me. But I see online a lot in forums and things like that. At times, I see quite a bit of animosity towards the competition callers and just competition calling in general. And you see a lot of people saying, well, I'm not interested in impressing judges. I just need to impress the birds and, that sort of thing. And, I'm not sure if it's jealousy or what it is, but, I look at a goose call, and I think in no way am I comparing myself to you, but in the same vein that you do is that you're talking about your percussion background, the acoustics of your environment, all of those sort of things play into it like it's an instrument. And I liken it to if I was a guitar player, if I was a basic guitar player and all I could play was Smoke on the Water, I'd still look at people playing Stairway to Heaven and be incredibly impressed and wish that I had the command of the guitar like they do. So
absolutely,
I'm curious as to why. And again, if this is just my perception, I could be the only one that sees this. But why do you think that there is that animosity towards someone who obviously has incredible command of something that we all wish we could do? Is that a perception that other people feel? And if so, I'd like to get your opinion on that.
I know I do see that, and I agree with where you're coming from with that. I do totally and see a lot. I don't see it on the goose calling side, me personally. I think where a lot of that comes from is the duck calling side. And, to give those guys some credit, duck calling has evolved to where guys are doing things on the stage on a Main Street routine that ducks don't do. They physically don't do a 40-note highball. So when, and a lot of times people say, well, it's good for the sport, blah, blah, blah. But, sometimes I could play devil's advocate and say, well, is it good for the sport? Meaning if a non-hunter that wants to get into hunting hears that, first thing he says, well, man, that doesn't sound like that. And if it turns him away from the sport, is it really good for the sport? And I may take some heat from that for some competition duck callers from that, but that's my biggest pet peeve is when it's evolved. Now, I will say that with a disclaimer. Most of your competition duck callers are incredibly skilled, and they're not doing that hunting, obviously. They're in there, I hunt one of them any day of the week. But from a perception of a non-hunter or a non-competition caller, when they see those guys do that on stage, 9 times out of 10, they're thinking, man, I just, that's not my cup of tea. I just want to kill birds. I just want to impress the ducks, not necessarily impress judges, I haven't necessarily heard that on the goose calling side. Most of the time on the goose calling stuff, every note that you're doing goose, on stage, you could do out in the field. Not necessarily saying you would do it, but if you had to do it, it's in your bag of tricks, So that's to me, that's probably where some of that comes from. And I think a lot of that skill towards the duck. I really think the meat duck calling contest is where is really, really good, and they're fun to watch. I think, and I honestly dare to say, you'd ask most of your contest callers, they would prefer to call it a meat style contest than a Main Street. The Main Street has such tight tolerances. It's a different animal, man. It is a totally, totally different contest, and I do highly respect, the guys that have success on the stage to do that because, they're having to blow, 3 routines or maybe 4 if they're in a call off and be perfect each round. But, and pretty much you're having guys that all sound the same, behind stage. And it's a tough gig to do. It's not my cup of tea necessarily, but I definitely see the talent that they have, as far as the ability to control the call and all that. But it's just not necessarily my cup of tea. And I could see where a non-hunter or non-competition caller would kind of have a little negative taste in their mouth as far as contest callers per se. So.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And but I always just keep thinking, man, if a guy, even if that's not a natural sound, the fact that he can control the call and make that sound, he can sit in my blind any day, and I'll just put my calls away. So
that's right. And I've hunted with some guys that have been in the top 10 in the world duck. I mean, and great callers from a Main Street. But I'll be honest, not good callers at all when it comes to hunting in the woods at all. Didn't understand control. Didn't understand. I mean, way too loud on volume, trying to ring the call. In a timber, and it's just like, hey, come on, man, this is not, when you're sitting on the X, best thing to do is not call much at all, and you're calling it tails. And so I've seen both sides of it, and me being a contest caller, I see guys and I've hunted with guys that, John Stevens, Jim Ronquist, that are incredible on stage. And you hunt with them in the woods, and I'm telling you, they're all duck, and they get it, and those are the guys that, you think, man, okay, here we, these are, that's the ones I wish the people that didn't understand contest calling, if they could be around more, those type of people, they would get it. They would understand. Say, oh, okay, I see you do competition calling because it makes you a better caller. You can control it, but the way you actually hunt, I want to be like you,
Yeah, we could talk about calling all day long with you, but unfortunately we got, time we got to roll on. So, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit more, what you kind of got going on more now. You're obviously, as we mentioned in the roll-in, director of marketing for Higdon Outdoors. You've got your store catalog company, Final Flight Outdoors. You're involved with Under Armour. Tell us some, about what you got going on and sort of, the different things you're working.
Yeah, well, of course, I work for Higdon, Higdon Decoy, Higdon Outdoors. I'm the director of marketing. I help do with their website and any kind of marketing ventures and help with product photography and anything to help, promote their our line of decoys and such. And we've got a lot of great stuff on the horizon, a lot of good products, and kind of really a great looking product lineup. Obviously we make the core decoys, but also getting the motion decoys and stuff like that as well. Also I've been I guess my term with him as an outdoor athlete with Under Armour. And I've been affiliated with Under Armour, off and on for, actually right when I was in college, I did some work with Under Armour right when they introduced the camo code gear, believe it or not. And, I've been right after when I graduated college, I had an employment opportunity with Drake, and I actually had to, not do my stuff with Under Armour anymore. And I went to work with Drake Waterfowl as their director of marketing. I worked with him for probably, 4 or 5 years and, until I went on board with Higdon. And when I did, of course, Drake was starting to come out with some duck decoys and stuff. And I went on and did the, Under Armour. We started doing some more promotional work back with those guys again, and been very fortunate and very appreciative and been able to learn along the ways with good companies such as even with Drake and with Higdon and Under Armour. So we also have I'm in partners with my two brothers with a retail catalog, Final Flight Outfitters, and we have a storefront here in Union City, Tennessee. And pretty much we sell everything. We sell all the brands of hunting products, whether it's big game, waterfowl, stuff like that. Very fortunate with that. And we try to make everything grow, with my role with our store and what we do there. And then, like I say, I help with the promotions aspect with Under Armour and then keep and marketing stuff with Higdon. I've been very blessed, and one thing about it, this hunting industry is small, and the people you meet along the way, I'll have to say I'm really indebted to, and a lot of the companies that I've worked with, and I've been very fortunate, made a lot of friends, and still call friends, even the companies that I'm not necessarily, working with, anymore just because I moved on to, with different companies, but the companies in the past, a lot of friends and like to say, no burnt bridges, hopefully, so, very, very close and hold them dear to my heart and very, very, very good guys. So.
And Kelley, you said that you do all the website stuff for Higdon. So tell us, just over the past couple of years, if you checked Higdon's website a couple of years ago compared to now, it is just peppered with new product. Tell us a little bit about the changes that Higdon has going on.
Yeah, well, of course, obviously being from Tennessee, I'm a duck hunter at heart. And when I went to work for Higdon, they actually asked me if I would kind of head up their sales, and sales is not necessarily my specialty, but so I assisted doing that. But my biggest thing at that time, Higdon was mostly known as a goose decoy company, and I said, guys, I'm a duck hunter at heart. We need to really beef up our duck line. So we really got in, neck deep into the duck decoys, and now we have our biggest news for this year. We have our battleship line of duck decoys, that are foam filled. We have the flock heads on the drakes. Very, very popular and a great item for us. We also redid our Goose line, and we have the Alpha series. That's more of a a life-size style full-body goose decoy with the flock heads, everything, and incredible paint detail. As far as the website, we're actually doing a lot of cool stuff. We have a partner with a media firm that's in the hometown of where our office is located, and they do commercials for all kind of big networks and stuff, just in the media industry. And basically the way it worked out, they were looking for some office space, and the owners of our company are friends with them, and we went in and kind of did a partnership with them, and they produced some incredible little commercials for our products. So we can do some really cool stuff as far as put goose decoys, duck decoys, or whatever on a spin table, and we can actually do a 360-degree view of the products, and then we'll incorporate some in-use footage as far as on the water in the field, and we can basically put that down and edit that down to a 30-second commercial. And the goal is on our website to have those little short clips for just about every product that we offer. So if you're a customer, you can go to the, Alpha Goose Decoy page, and you can see not only your studio images and your field images of that product, you can also watch a video of it in a studio environment, spinning 360 degrees to see every angle of the decoy, as well as in the field being used with some hunting footage as well. So that's been really cool as far as from a website standpoint, and hopefully we're seeing a lot of good results from that.
It's funny that you mentioned the videos. I was just before we started chatting here, I was on the website looking at some of the videos that they've done with some of the motion decoys that you guys offer. And they're just incredible. I mean, some of the videos are just hard to imagine that they're actually decoys. It looks like a really active spread that the capabilities of the decoys you guys have. So those videos are incredible.
And Higdon's a unique company because we're obviously a decoy company. We offer with our line of decoys, we also offer motion decoys. And the motion is a big part of our business. Higdon's had motion products for years now. And we used to have the flapper Canada Goose, and we still offer a version of that today. And they used to have a kind of a tram system with a lot of goose decoys in the necks, with feed, and that's back in the mid '90s that their father Mark come up with. And we don't offer that product anymore, but it's really evolved into the portable stuff. And probably our best, most recognizable item in that is the pulsator, where you have a mini 12-volt battery and a portable battery box. So when you get to your hunting location that morning, you just plug it up and you literally chunk it, throw it out in the water, and it'll shoot it's a feeding butt decoy. It'll shoot a spray of water every half second. And it does that 4 times on and off, and then it'll set idle for about 8 seconds. So it creates ripple in the spread. If you need a quick hunt as far as a quick setup where you don't want to have to run a jerk cord, the pulsators are incredible for motion, to create ripple on the water. And you guys know how this is. If you were able to fly over or get up in the air and look at water when it's sitting still, especially decoys on water, everything looks dead. It looks like a graveyard. It looks like statues out there. But if you were able to create ripple, everything just comes to life, especially, so that's a big thing. And that's where the pulsator is really, really helpful in those situations.
So recently, you mentioned when you came on board, it was primarily goose decoys. And then for a while, there was a good bit of, mallard decoys, on the site and that were offered by Higdon. And then this year with the Battleship series, you guys have come out with quite a few sea duck diver duck varieties. I think bluebills were the first ones to come out last year, but this year you've added buffleheads, golden eyes, canvasbacks, redheads, and not a diver duck, but pintails as well. Talk a little bit about the thought process and the research that goes into the specific species that you decide to offer, because you'll see some companies out there offer every type of bird that flies in the sky. It seems like. What are the thought processes and the discussions that kind of happen behind the scenes to decide which decoys you guys are going to go into mass production with?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of it is our own internal research and demand and consumer demand. We listen to the calls, we listen to the criticism, we listen to we read the emails, but we kind of get the vibe of what the hunters are wanting. And let's face it, we're hunters ourselves. All of us here at the office, we hunt. We're doing, we do this, it's our passion, so we see that the diver stuff we're going to get into the the duck line, we have to have the diver decoys, and we wanted to offer with the battleships, we wanted to offer a premium, as far as the biggest, the baddest, as far as most durable decoy we could possibly offer. And that's kind of why we have, have them in foam field and stuff like that. So, yeah, a lot of it's, like I say, market research. You're aware of what the consumers are wanting. Unfortunately, it's tough to manufacture specialty decoys that there's not a lot of use for. As far as a hunter standpoint, if there's not a lot of demand, it creates it tough to create the modes for that product. Because the modes can get pricey, they can get expensive, and the manufacturing costs can get expensive if you're not creating much quantity of that particular item. So it's one of those things that we kind of weigh the pros and cons, and we try to build our line to where it's thorough. Because if you're a hunter, we want to. If you like our mallard decoys, we want you to obviously hunt over our diver duck decoys as well. So we try to create that full line of hunting products that you might need.
The decoy market in general just seems to have just exploded with competition. It seems like every time I grab a Cabela's or one of your Final Flight catalogs, it seems like there's a new manufacturer out there trying to do it different or a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about some of the strategies that Higdon has employed to separate themselves and kind of differentiate themselves from just every other decoy that you see when you're flipping through the catalog.
Yeah, there is. The decoy market's tough, and it's saturated, and our competitors, and I'm overly honest with consumers and customers, and even at our store, I tell them, from Higdon's standpoint, there's our competitors make great products. There's no doubt. And as I told you guys, even before we went on the air, there are products that we make that I wholeheartedly feel that we have a leg up on, or I prefer this product or others. There are products that I think that, we have a comparable product, and then there's some that I say, we're not necessarily there yet on this item if you're comparing it to something else that we might be beat at as far as in a competitor. So, as far as what we try to do, obviously you have to be real. You've got to be real, and that's kind of that get real is kind of a slogan that we've used. It's on our website, and we kind of carry that tagline over to our thinking of how to develop products. But your realism is at the most. Now, with that said, from a mallard decoy standpoint, sometimes over-dramatization can be a little more effective from a hunting standpoint. Meaning, me personally, I like my drakes a little lighter, and I like my hens a little darker as far as color from the actual real thing. If you get up in the air, especially on a sunny day, and you were to fly over bodies of water with live ducks on, you primarily see two colors. You'll see whites and you see blacks. If the sunlight is at your back and you're going, what you're seeing as far as the whites is the side panels, the side of your mallard drakes. Now, if the sun's at a different location, so the only thing you're seeing is black because it's the actual shadow part of the bird. So with our hen decoys, you take a hen decoy that's just kind of painted brown and you place her on muddy water. When you fly over that spread, you can't see your hen decoys. They just disappear, and even real hens for that matter too, they disappear on muddy water. So, a lot of even the real foot hunters, they may kind of have a bad name as far as appearance. They used to hunt over a lot of the black jugs, and people may frown on that and think, why in the world do you want to do it? Well, if you set up beside a spread that has 1,000 of these black jugs out, you'll see why. From a distance, ducks see that mass and they see that dark color, and it's like they have tunnel vision, and they will not look at any other spread. They will look at that one spread, key in and on it, and they'll end up shooting on those ducks. You could have the real thing out there and setting in your decoys, and they wouldn't pay you any attention, and we see it a lot here, around Reelfoot as well, to where on a low water year, you'll have those lily pad stems and bonnets. Even they'll out in open water, those lily pad stems will show up, and it's nothing but a decaying lily pad basically in a bonnet. But at a distance, ducks will bail out at that because it looks like a massive duck sitting on the water. And then when they get into 50 or 60 yards, they realize it's not actual ducks at all. So that kind of goes in the philosophy of, I like my drakes a little bit lighter on the backs, not overly white, with that, and I like my hen decoys just painted a little darker so they'll show up better when they're sitting on muddy water.
I think the mindset that Higdon has always evolving. And, the first time that you think that you're the top is the same time that you're going to get passed up. And, knowing that you can always get better is, just a great mindset as a company, and always, working to be better. What can we expect from Higdon? Any future plans? I don't know if you can release any info. What else you got coming down the pipe?
Well, I think what you'll see, you'll definitely see us expanding on our duck line some more. We do have some stuff we're doing there. We have some motion products that are just incredible that we'll have out for 2015 for next year, the spring, and you'll also see our Goose line expanded as well. And I know that's kind of a blanket answer I gave you. But we do have some stuff that's really creative, some awesome stuff in the motion line that you guys will like. And that's, like you said, you try to stay ahead, but then again, it's not, it's out there. The ideas are out there. You just gotta be out in Mother Nature. You gotta be out in the field every day to find them. It's not recreating anything, and you're just duplicating what's already been created in real life. So we just try to find those little niches and where we might can create a market or a little bit of a following and offer that product. And let's face it, I'm sitting in the blind looking for ways of how I can be more successful tomorrow than I am today. And if it's design a decoy this way or paint a decoy this way, then we do it. And those ideas turn into actual products a year or two later. So that's how the product ideas start. It's found in a marsh, in the woods, or in a goose pit, and it starts out from there and works its way up to actual full scale production product.
Kelley, where can people go to find more information about Higdon products and where to purchase?
Well, you go to HigdonDecoys.com and HigdonDecoys.com. That's our website. Our products are sold in just about every major hunting retailer out there. Obviously, Cabela's, Gander Mountain, Bass Pro, Max Spray, Wings, Final Flight Outfitters, Shields, Rogers. I can go on down the list. If you have a local sporting goods store down the road from you, go check them out. If they don't have Higdon, ask them that if they would, and look at carrying them, and the store buyer can call Higdon, and we can definitely set them up. We have a wonderful network of dealers throughout the country that we work with, and without those guys, we couldn't distribute the product so you guys could see it. And I'm very, very fortunate to have them, and you can go to our website too and look at what we have as well. And like I say, try your local dealer. For the most part, you may have a dealer just 10, 15 miles down the road that you didn't realize that you can actually go that afternoon and put your hands on the product and see it with your own eye.
Well, Kelley, we appreciate you spending some time with us here today, and you've given us just a ton of information. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on the show, and we just like to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can have you again sometime.
Absolutely, man. Love, we can. I like to talk, so man, we can talk. We can talk all night, especially about hunting, man. And thank you guys again, and I just tell everybody to be safe this fall, man, and get their kids out or friends and family and introduce somebody to hunting, man, and enjoy it. It's here, man. We were getting ready for kill season, and early goose season here is now upon us, so won't be long, and we'll be feeling some cold north wind days.
All right, there he is, World Goose Calling Champion, Director of Marketing for Higdon Outdoors, Kelley Powers. Check him out at HigdonDecoys.com. Thanks again, Kelley.
Thank you, guys.
So, Dan, I don't know about you, but after talking with Kelley, I listened back to that, and there's just so much knowledge and so much information and so much experience that he shares. I just thought that was a really great conversation, and it was great having him stop by the show.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, listening to the way he answers questions just brings up so many more questions that, hopefully he'll join us in another episode just to go back over that. Like you said, so much information, and for someone to be so analytical when it comes to something like contest calling and breaking it down like that, just there's no wonder why he was, the world champion. Like, it's mind blowing to listen to what he went through.
I practice on my call a lot, and I'm nowhere near the level of some of these competition callers, but you can just tell when you talk with a guy like him that the command and the control that they have over their call is just a different level of what, normal guys like me and you and, other guys like that are doing in the field. So, for those of those out there that don't think that competition calling and calling in the field parallels each other, I got to believe that it does. I mean, if you're going to put me in a blind with somebody, I'll take Kelley any day of the week and twice on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'd love to sit in a blind with him, and I don't even know if I could focus on the birds just listening to him call. So it was, a great interview. Like you said, tons of information, and it was that's an awesome interview, I think.
Yeah, and we encourage everyone to go out and support, the things that Kelley is involved with. He's obviously involved with Higdon Outdoors. He's got his shop there that he talked about, Final Flight Outfitters. He's involved with Under Armour. We encourage everyone to go out, support those, support those companies, and keep supporting guys like Kelley that are doing, good things in the waterfowl industry. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and transition here into our parting shot. So the parting shot this episode is going to be focused really on something pretty simple and but gets overlooked quite a bit, and that's just everyday safety when you're out there in the field. Most guys don't realize that you're more likely to die from hypothermia or drowning, things of that nature in the field when you're waterfowl hunting rather than gunshot. So you got to make safety your number one priority when you're in the field. Wearing life jackets, ensuring your gun muzzles are pointed in the proper direction, maintaining your gun on safe, all of those sort of things. If you've ever hunted with me, you know that I like to have a kind of a safety briefing in the beginning of the morning before the hunt. Make sure everyone's on the same page as far as shooting lanes, who's going to be calling shots, all of that kind of stuff. It's just important, and it just shouldn't be overlooked. Have a plan if something happens. We touched on this in another episode, but if you fall in the water or somebody has an issue in the field, make sure you've got emergency contact numbers on your person. Just ways that you can get help if you need it and you get caught in a tough spot. Same goes for your dog. Don't forget about your dog. They're just as important in making sure you're taking care of them. And always remember, you always have another day. There's always going to be another day to hunt. So just be safe. And that's going to do it for this episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We'd like to thank Kelley Powers for joining the show. We'd encourage you guys to check everything out that he's got going on at Higdon Outdoors, Final Flight Outfitters, and we'd like to thank you for tuning into the show. If you like what you hear, check us out on Facebook, on iTunes. We'd love for you to fill out a review and give us a rating. If you have questions, send us emails at info@hpoutdoors.com or through our contact page on our website. And as always, we appreciate your time. For Dan, I'm Josh. Thanks for joining us. Take care.